it is a very much an inchworming process where you do a sprint and you have a lot of progress in making connection, developing processes, creating assets, right? And then you're going to hit a block of something's always going to happen. We know this. And then moving forward past that. So the way that we do that in Trainual, right, is collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have employees all over the place, all over the world. And we've got a team in the Ukraine. We have to be communicating with each other regularly, relevantly, and urgently when necessary. So it's really just a matter of, to your point, being very mindful of what's going on. Challenges are going to happen for us because we move at the speed of imagination.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My guest here today is Diane Adams, who is a leader in business development and partnerships at Trainual. Diane, I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yeah, tell everyone a little bit more about Trainual, maybe a little bit more. I know we could be here all day, but about yourself as well, and who you guys are, who you help, all that stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I would love to. So my name is Diane Adams. I'm a business development professional. I've been working with entrepreneurs and small businesses for, I'm going to give my age away here, guys, for about 27 years. So I'm really excited to be working with Trainual right now because we help those entrepreneurs and business owners document and share their institutional knowledge and training. And we find, and I'm sure a lot of you who are listening can relate to this, when we say, hey guys, do you have a business playbook? Fear probably is the first thing that comes up, right? So it's really cool to be in a space where we're stepping into a place where people are a little bit uncomfortable and maybe even a little bit scared, right? And providing that just real confidence and like, this just really isn't that complicated. However, extremely important.
Yeah. And what do you think are some of the, I guess, the biggest mistakes that businesses make when they're trying to build these systems, these processes, these playbooks internally that doesn't allow them to get the results that they really wish they could?
You could not have teed me up better with that question. It's so interesting. So the biggest obstacle we face is in getting started, right? Is in having an entrepreneur or small business owner take a breath and understand that this is a project, right? Anytime you're documenting your SOPs or flows, or even your team structures, right? It's a project. It's going to take a little bit of time. And as long as you're planning around that time, it feels scalable and achievable. But really what we see a lot of times is that fear, right? They hit something like a terror barrier, right? Where they're bumping up into the project and going, ooh. And so then what is the challenge? They close the closet door, right? They keep throwing things into the closet, they keep the door closed. And by the time that everything is spilling out of the door, it's like, oh boy, right? So better to just say, let's throw in the steak right now. And really having that conversation is probably the space where I find the biggest friction.
That's interesting. I was actually speaking with someone a couple weeks back, and they were mentioning that a lot of times in business, he has had multiple exits, so a great successful entrepreneur. But he was mentioning that the majority of the time, even when the companies were very, very successful, he was just creating it as he was stepping. This bridge was just morphing under his feet, as opposed to just, hey, so much calculation and planning, which obviously can be important. But it's like, hey, just take the action, get it started, and then things can get sorted out later. And once people take that first step, what do you think is the obstacle from there on?
I think probably maintaining momentum, just like with anything, right? For most of us entrepreneurs, we get pulled in multiple different directions, right? You might be expert in your specific industry, but running a business requires you to put on all those multiple hats, right? And so it feels like it's more about the mindset. It's really just about getting into the mindset and understanding the importance of what's going to happen. So you can't have momentum if you don't have leadership buy-in, right? So if I could step us back just a step, looking at that leadership buy-in first and like, what does that look like? Do we need to lean in here first before we even start moving forward with a project, right? Because they're going to drive that momentum.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And for people who look to get these systems and these projects, these processes placed within their company, how do they usually find out about Trainual? Is it mostly word of mouth? Is it conferences? Is it more online marketing? How does that relationship usually start for you guys?
Great question. So we do have a really awesome online marketing presence. If you follow us on Instagram, you're probably like, I'm smiling even just thinking about the feed right now. It's hilarious, but it's hilarious because it's relevant,
Mm,
right? It's funny because it addresses the pain points that all entrepreneurs and small business owners face, right? So we have a really good presence there. So you might run across us there.
hmm
We are at a lot of industry events. And then we just do a real good job in strategic partnerships. So
hmm
you'll see us in the marketplace in our strategic partnerships.
And I find it so interesting that a lot of businesses think of how to attract new customers very directly, and there's many other avenues to also make that happen, which obviously partnership is a big one, when it comes to that conversation. And I think trust is always a big factor in there as well. How do you guys manage to build that trust into a new possible business relationship, without being, I guess, too forthcoming? And the reason why I ask that is because I've had so many conversations where it's usually like the same old, hey, here's who you are, do you want this? And people are like, no, I'm actually okay. So it's like, how does that process usually work for you, in showing the value of Trainual, but also saying, hey, this is something that is going to help you just from us having a conversation. If it doesn't help you, you don't need us, no worries at all, but here's some trust building in that process.
The trust building is essential, right?
Yeah.
We all know the know, love, and trust, right? Know, love, and trust. At Trainual, I like to look at content, connection, and confidence,
Mm,
right? And so when we're meeting with those business owners, it's really just about understanding where they are,
hmm
right? Not coming at somebody with, hey, here are features and making it
yeah.
a transactional conversation, right? In what I do in partnerships and creating strategic partnerships specifically, it's the conversation of where are you stuck? Where is your business stuck?
uh
What skills are maybe you hanging up with? And then we come in from that arena, right? Because Trainual itself, it's very affordable. We're super transparent about pricing, right? You can always pop out to trainual.com/pricing. It's going to tell you what it is. A
hmm
lot of companies are not going to be so forthcoming, right?
hmm
You're not going to see all the features and the add-ons and really just open book to the
hmm
catalog. We like to open that book, right?
hmm
We want to create trust from the get-go. And then beyond that, right, we're very willing to share Trainual platform to give you little peeks, right? Of
hmm
course, we're here to show people little trials if they want them. But most entrepreneurs, and I know everyone's going to start nodding their heads as soon as I say this, trials typically don't work well because what do we do with a trial once we sign up for it? And this is true with tech, with our streaming services, right? We just let it sit until
yeah.
it expires. And then we're like, ah, I didn't go look at it, right?
Yeah.
So, in working with our partners, we like to give them a little bit more time and perhaps enablement resources to give them a little bit of a taste of success.
Interesting. And is there a specific type of company that really excels with what Trainio provides, or is it kind of all over the place? Anybody can benefit from it.
We do really well with folks that are in real estate, construction, banking, things like that. Anyone who's hiring and training consistently, right? Franchises, obviously, where you're wanting to replicate not just SOPs, but where you're really wanting to replicate culture.
hmm
And so it's a really interesting conversation talking around our ideal client profile is about 25 to 250 employees. But because every business needs a playbook, we work in all those spaces in between,
hmm
right? My specific industry vertical are financial services organizations. They're a little bit lower in the employee count,
Yeah.
right? So they're usually about 3 to maybe 17, but they have high revenue,
hmm
high revenue with low retention, which means
hmm
the offices are generating money, but they're frustrated
mm
and the teams aren't cohesive. And so we can bring some tech in and create that cohesiveness, right? Around content. It's wild,
Yeah.
amazing.
Uh-huh. Yeah. You said the word culture in there, and I always find it fascinating to hear people's different perspective in culture. I've actually had someone say that culture is obviously a very great part of business, but it can negatively affect it because people focus too much on it as opposed to doing the work. So they're like, how can I be a culture fit? How can I be a culture fit? And then they stop the actual execution, which can be detrimental. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you think about building culture, for you guys internally, in how you try to build that up, but also spread that around the team so that everybody is kind of on the same page.
Yeah, so we have core values, and every business has their own core values. As I'm talking, like just be thinking of your core values. And what we try to do is layer the values into our team engagement, not just what we deliver to the client. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we're focused on that culture feel as we're delivering,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't have good delivery to the customer if we're not having good interaction with our team,
Yep.
right? And so we do a lot of things like internal praise, right? So we use Slack as the way that we communicate internally, real quickly, right? We do praises using Lattice, right? So here we're layering in some tech. We're using Trainual, we're using Lattice, we're using Slack, but we're
Mm-hmm.
offering praise around the core values, right?
Mm-hmm.
So say you did a great job. Yeah, you did a great job today, but what specifically in that activity related to the values? And
Mm-hmm.
so yes, sometimes you're just focusing too much on and here's how it can happen.
Yeah.
Is the value the basketball team on Wednesday nights, or is that an activity that can
Hmm.
be participated in because you have a team engagement culture,
Hmm.
right? So it's just how you look at it. I really think it's more about being mindful in the
Hmm.
way that you're creating your culture experience, and not getting too hung up on check boxes.
Not getting too hung up on check boxes. Hmm.
Mhm.
I.
Right? Have I jumped through that hoop this week? Have I jumped through that hoop this week? Have I shown these guys that, right? If you know the values of the firm that you're at or the firm that you're growing yourself, and you're living those values and you're executing and delivering with
Mm-hmm.
those values, it's not a complicated situation. And in fact, it feels seamless. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like breathing, right?
Hmm. Interesting. I
When,
like
when
that.
it gets, when it gets a little jankety, right?
As it
Is
might sometimes, yeah.
and it will at first, probably, right? Especially when you're learning how to engage and develop a culture through tech,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what we do at Trainual, and I spoke to this with our Instagram feed, right? We use a lot of humor. We use a lot of cultural references,
Mm-hmm.
right? We use a lot of memes and GIFs and things like that to keep things real light and fun because that's also part of our culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being joyful and having fun at work. And there are things, all of us have opened that playbook. I'm
Yeah.
sorry if it's an actual binder, folks, but we've opened it, right? And we've just seen the copy and maybe smelled the dust on that page.
Mm.
That's not inspiring culture,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And
I
you have the opportunity to do that digitally.
Yeah, I think that's so important as well. It's so many companies, especially the ones that have kind of been there, been operating for over 10 plus years. So I think it's just we've always done it this way. We'll maintain is like innovate, iterate, try new things, adapt, make sure that everybody that's on board is actually on board. Like that's a
Yes,
big part of it as well, right?
yeah, of course. And you said it right. That the quote that you just gave is a quote that our team members hear day in and day out, day in and day out, day in.
Mm,
We've always done it this way. We've always like this is, and we kind of giggle, right? We're kind of like,
yeah.
it's a natural human instinct to
Hmm.
almost be a little defensive about all the hard work. Of course, it took you a lot of work to get to where you are, right? But to
Yeah.
your point, if you're going to innovate and if you're going to scale,
Hmm.
especially not just innovate, if we're talking about scaling,
Hmm.
right? What do we know about doing something the same way?
Yeah.
You're going to get the same result,
Yeah,
right? You're
and
going to
what
get
got you here
the
won't
result.
get you there. So that's a big
That's
part of
right.
that too. I think people often have that misconception: 0 to 1 million. Hey, I'm gonna just do this forever.
That's
No,
right.
from 1 to 5 and 5 to 10 and 10 to 20. It's all different, all different.
Different motions.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And
100%.
different mindset. So
Yeah.
not only are they different motions, the mindset of the entrepreneur as they're approaching, right?
Hmm.
Not just the standard operating procedures, but looking at their quarterly goals, looking at their annual goals, and then really looking at that playbook
Hmm.
and seeing if it's going to motivate and empower the team to move in the direction that you need them to. Again, this is all about motivation.
Mm. All about motivation. I like that. What do you think are the best characteristics, Diane, of your most successful customers, so the ones that take the most advantage of what you guys have to offer? And yeah, maybe one, two, three things that are like, if you just do these things, you'll be able to achieve the results you're looking for?
So this is really interesting. And I would say the most common thing that I see in someone who is an A player, right? Especially a remote person who is able to be a really amazing A player, is
Hmm.
they're excited. They're excited. And sometimes this is a surprising word for people. And they're like, I don't know how to grow that. Well, you better, right?
Okay.
You better. Because, and again, it goes back to that motivation. What is inspiring you, right? Why
Hmm.
are you excited about this? And if you as a business owner aren't feeling that excitement from that team player,
Hmm.
they aren't either,
Hmm.
right? They're not either. So, and then just really looking at your team authentically, knowing that, I'm a DISC consultant, right? So I do personality assessments all the time. We never expect team members to have the same personality,
Hmm.
right? And we know that they're coming to their desk and their laptops with different personalities, and just understanding that, right? Your
Hmm.
A players can have many different kinds of personalities. Meeting them where they are instead of expecting them to meet you where you are is extremely helpful in keeping that A player engaged, right? What
Hmm.
do they need to keep them motivated? You've got them there, but
Hmm.
asking them the questions, right?
Yeah.
Getting out of your computer and
Yeah.
actually asking.
It sounds like that awareness of it is like kind of the root of it all. It's like, hey, just
Yeah,
be aware that this is happening and
yeah.
aware of how you are able to change how you act because of it, or how you interact, or how you ask questions. But first
And
step
again,
is,
making it part of the conversation,
yeah.
right? Just making it a very natural, expected part of the conversation.
Hmm. Awesome. Very, very cool. And if we're looking at Trainual as a company, obviously I'm assuming just like any other company, there's always the ups and the downs and the sideways and everything that's always going on. So when thinking about growth and things that you guys go through, maybe some obstacles, maybe some challenges, what are some of the things that you face into achieving the next step that you guys are looking for?
I think something I could speak to very specifically right now is growing our strategic partnerships.
Hmm.
It is a very much an inchworming process, right? Where you do a sprint and you have a lot of progress in making connection, developing processes, creating assets, right?
Hmm.
And then you're going to hit a block of something's always going to happen. We know this,
Hmm.
right? And then moving forward past that. So the way that we do that in Trainual, right, is collaboration.
Hmm.
So we do have employees all over the place, all over the world, right? And we've got a team in the Ukraine. We have to be communicating with each other regularly, um, relevantly,
Hmm.
right? And urgently when necessary. So it's really just a matter of, to your point, being very mindful of what's going on. Challenges are going to happen for us because we move at the speed of imagination.
Hmm.
Okay. So when you're moving at the speed of imagination, right? If you can imagine that high velocity
Yeah.
movement, when you run into obstacles, boy, they really can throw you off, right?
Yeah.
The impact is different because you're moving so quickly. But then
Hmm.
also, by the same token, sometimes you just run right over them because you're moving so quickly.
Mm.
So there are pros and cons in moving
Hmm.
quickly, but having come from financial services, right? And we're talking glacial progress. Okay. I mean, just slow as molasses process. Coming into a startup tech environment where we're very speedy, right?
Hmm.
We are actively listening to entrepreneurs in
Hmm.
cities all over the world. Where are you stuck? What do you need? What are we hearing? And we're really, yes, we're sourcing ourselves as the experts in moving us past these obstacles, but we're really looking outside and masterminding with folks that are
Mm.
actually in these communities across industries.
Awesome. Very, very cool. I think that's always very important, to just having so many other different set of eyes to move things forward, because one person can have this what seems like the most minimal opinion, or like, oh, that's actually what I need. I don't need anything else. Boom, act, act, act. So I think that's also always very, very important for any growing business. And when looking at the client acquisition side of things, are there challenges alongside that avenue of the business as well?
I think there are, and it's really around mindfulness again, right?
Oh,
It's like
interesting.
it's around what is the story that we've told the person, right? And what
Hmm.
is the story in their mind that they've created themselves, because we all do it,
Hmm.
right? And so
And
it's
do you,
really
when you say that, do you mean the story about them or the story about you?
both,
Mm,
like both, because the story about me that they're playing in their head is coming from themselves and their own story, right?
mm,
So, as someone who does performance coaching, right? And we talked about this just a second ago,
mm,
really coming from that other person's perspective,
mm.
right? Really like turning off what I'm seeing and hearing through my eyes and ears for the moment and trying to literally put myself in that person's shoes. And however I can do that, it might be spending time with them, it might be walking with them and lining up and doing some work
Yeah.
together, right?
Hmm.
Or maybe it's just time to be quiet and do some R&D.
Very, very interesting. I like that as well. I think in business, so many times it may seem like a client relationship is two people on different sides of the table, as opposed to, hey, we're on the same side. It's us against the problem, not us against each other. So,
Yes.
yeah, I
Yes.
really like that. Diane, I have two more questions here for you, and one is actually a question that I've been asking everybody.
Okay.
So we'll start with that. And let's say you had a magic wand, and you
Mhm.
could just wave this amazing wand, and it could solve one thing, one obstacle, one challenge, one whatever in the business that would help your growth goals really just happen. What would the one thing be that you'd like to solve?
Releasing a business owner's white knuckles around project kickoff.
How so?
That would be it. It would, so many times when I am speaking with the person who is not the decision maker, right? So this is a person within a firm who knows what is happening. They
Hmm.
have their finger on the pulse of the activity in the firm and they're making a suggestion, right? But the business owner can't hear it or they can't see it because they're so white knuckled on how they've always done it,
Mm,
right? So if we could go back to what we were talking about and just release the grip around the we've always done it this way and allow that business owner magically to listen to staff, we could move so many things forward so fast.
that's interesting. Do you think that might be just because of the education or the knowledge that the person who hears about you guys have that isn't able to transfer that value over, or is it just not reaching the, I guess, the decision maker itself? Just to put it in simple terms, which one do you
I,
think it is?
I think there are two things. I think it's positioning, of course,
Yep.
right? Showing the value proposition.
Yeah.
But I also think that when a person has done their job exceptionally well, the business owner doesn't see the pain. Business owner doesn't even know there's pain because that individual has done such an excellent job in managing whatever is going on around
Mm,
that pain, right? And so if I'm coming to my business owner and I'm saying, "Hey Bob, I need you to invest in Trainual because we need to start documenting these SOPs because Sally is asking me this question 85 times a day."
yeah.
He doesn't care because
Yeah.
you're answering the question 85 times
Hmm.
a day for Sally. If I say, "Bob, I'm handing in my notice. I cannot handle Sally telling me this 85 times a day. I can't do it." And he says, "If I had a magic wand,
Hmm.
what,
Uh,
what would you do?"
awesome.
Right? And of
Yeah.
course, it would be subscribing to Trainual or something like Trainual
Hmm.
so that you can start documenting these processes. So when Sally says, "Hey, Diane, what is blah, blah, blah?" I can say, "Did you Trainual that?" Then maybe,
Makes it so much easier. Oh, I
right?
like that. I like that. Well, thank you for that perspective.
Of
And
course.
final question here for you, Diane. It's actually not a question from me. It's a question
Okay.
from our last guest to you.
Sure.
So here's our question. You ready for it?
Yes.
What keeps the fire in the belly for you?
Oh, man. The look on an entrepreneur's face when we've made the pain go away. I
Hmm.
live for it. I live for it. It's like when you go to a movie and something is going on and you turn around and you look at what the audience's faces are doing. It really is knowing that I'm going to affect emotional change by making physical changes in a business.
Hmm. Very, very amazing.
It's
Diane,
so
thank
cool.
you. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. This has been such an incredible conversation. Thank you for sharing your
Yeah.
insights, your stories. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you or a little bit more about Trainual?
They can always go to trainual.com. If they want to reach out to me directly, it's just Diane, Diane at trainual.com. I'd love to chat with anyone who has an interest in making their lives easier.
I'm sure there are so many of those. So, Diane, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. I'm so excited for our conversation.
Thank you.